What's up learners, welcome back to this channel. Today we are doing a book review and it's called Personal Branding for Entrepreneurs. This actually was my first book for the year, and I remember sometime I shared how I would want to be doing book reviews, or rather book summaries of the books that I read, and this one was such a good read, and it's as small as you can see. But it's so packed, you guys. It's so packed. The author is Donna Richardson. I don't know if I've mentioned that already. And the book is basically divided into 3 parts. And the first one is personal branding basics. And then we go to foundations of personal branding. And the last one is getting practical. The last one I'm sure sounds exciting. And it was exciting to read. So let's get through that and get to see some of the things that I have learned about personal branding. It's something that is really exciting me nowadays, and I am, like getting into every material that I get that has to do with personal branding. So let's just get into it. But before that, if you haven't subscribed, please make sure to do and hit the notification bell so that anytime I put up a video, you are the first one to know about it. Let's get into it. So the first part, personal branding basics, and that definitely has the definition of what personal branding is, and the author talks about it being how people perceive you, and there's a definition that Jeff Bezos gives of the same term. It's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And I thought of the question, like, how do I display myself to inform what people say about me when I'm not in that space? That's what it is generally, and in simple terms, what people say about you when you're not somewhere, and like how they perceive you. And it's really important. There's something I saw here that was just amazing, that the first few seconds of interacting with someone can really inform how they perceive you. That impression you leave in their minds, is so hard to change once that perception has been created. So what's the impression you leave in the minds of people, in the hearts of people, within the first few seconds of interacting with them? That's so important, and you need to look into that. Still, in the first part of the book, the author busts a few myths of what personal branding is not. And the first one was that personal branding is not about bragging or shameless self-promotion. It's not about you bragging about things and all, like bragging is in a negative side, right? Personal branding is about your strengths. What value are you adding actually to the lives of people? The other myth that was busted is that personal branding and marketing is not just for celebrities, and it's not about giving up your privacy. Sometimes we think that personal branding is left only for celebrities, and sometimes you get scared of the term because you might think it's about putting everything about you out there in the public. It's not about giving up your privacy. The other myth that was really interesting to learn was that personal branding is not about pretending to be someone you're not or aggressively selling yourself. I liked further in the book, we'll see that there's a lot of authenticity when it comes to personal branding. So it's not about pretense, it's about being yourself, being truthful to who you are, being real about the value you can give, being real about the strength that you have. And then I think there was still another myth. Oh yeah. Personal branding is not optional for entrepreneurs. If you are an entrepreneur, let me tell you, personal branding is not left to chance, should not be left to chance. I am trying to get into that field. So I'm learning as much as I can about entrepreneurship, and I'm glad I landed on this book as the first book for the year. So I like that myth that personal branding is not optional for entrepreneurs, because as an entrepreneur, I believe you're competing for resources, you're competing for partnerships, you're competing for a market, maybe a particular market. So that means you need to be at the top of people's minds. And how do you make sure that you stay on top of the minds of people? So those are some of the basics of what personal branding is. One of the importance that was shared, why personal branding is important, is because you want to attract investors, right? And then the other thing is that you want also to get top talent to work with. You want to put yourself in such a way that you bring in the right people, the right team to work with. The last part is that you need referrals for your business. You need people to refer you to someone. That's why you are putting yourself out there. So I really loved what personal branding does in terms of your business and how it positions you for success. So then, that said, it's very important to remember that the first impressions matter. How are people perceiving you? And then you really need to be authentic and real with your market, with yourself, because you don't want to be saying this is what you offer, but you're not offering that, or you try and offer something but it flops. You need to be real. Focus on the strengths, focus on the things that you can do very well. That is the value that you bring to people and in other businesses. And then you also need to establish what makes you unique. How do you stand out? What makes you stand out? What makes you different from anyone else who is doing the same thing as you are? Establish that too. Something else that really blew my mind was that strong brands and great brands are actually built on word of mouth. That word of mouth is one of the biggest ways. It's the best way actually to put yourself out there, to have your brand known, word of mouth, because that's something that cannot be reputed, right? It's something that is trusted. So word of mouth is one of the best ways for your brand to be known out there and to be trusted. And then the author pointed out that great brands are built on strengths, not weaknesses. And you know what that means? It calls for a lot of self-awareness. You have to introspect and know, what are my strengths? What do I deliver best? So that you can build your brand based on that strength that you have. The second part was about foundations of personal branding. And the question that was posed, or rather the question I posed to you in this section, is what makes you you? Think about your strengths, think about your expertise, think about your values, the things that you build your life around, your values. Think about what you bring to the table. Think about your uniqueness. Think about the impact you want to create. Those are the things that make you you. Those are the things that your brand should really be focused on. And as I share this, I'm so excited because I see how I can apply them in any endeavor I find myself in. So it's so important to know what really matters to you. That is the foundation, because if you build your brand on something else, it's going to be really hard for you to sustain it. If you build it on values that do not represent you, it's going to be really detrimental for you and it's not going to sustain your brand. So think about those things, because I believe that we want something that is long-term, right? So you want to make sure that your values are considered when you're coming up with your brand, when you're sharing what you offer. You need to make sure that you understand the impact that you want to create. So what impact do you want to create? Something so important that we can't leave out is to understand that great brands are built on connections, or rather you rely heavily on your network. Yeah, you rely heavily on your network for your brand to be put out there. Remember, we talked about word of mouth. So if your network is seeing what you're doing, then they're going to share with more people. They share with their network and it spreads the message of what you offer. So then when it comes to networking, or rather your network, there are things that you need to put in mind. Remember that your network is your net worth. But for it to be successful, do not think just about receiving. What are you giving? Think about the value that you can also add to your network. Yeah. So that's how networks work. For it to be a success, for people to rely on you and for you to be able to rely on others, there has to be that symbiotic relationship. Like you can benefit from them and they can benefit from you. And also something else, note that it's about quality, not quantity. Sometimes you might have a billion friends. Okay, that's a bit exaggerated, but you might have so many friends. You might have a network, like you're saying, I have 1,500 connections or as many as you have, but think about quality. Think about someone who you can trust even when you're not in a room. That's someone who can speak highly of you. That's someone who can recommend you to businesses. So think about that. Is your network more of quantity or quality? And also think about following up. For a network to be successful, for your network to really matter, you have to be following up, because at the end of the day, it's about connection, right? It's about connecting. So you follow up on what they are doing, see how you can support them, and they do the same on their end for it to be a success. Yeah, so that is what networking is. That is basically how it should work, and that's such a good foundation for your personal branding. Another important foundation when it comes to personal branding is authenticity. Authenticity. Your values should align, with the business that you're doing. You should not get into something that you feel ashamed of doing or you don't represent fully, like when it comes to your values. Your values should inform the kind of business you get into, how you carry out that business. And on top of that, saying no is such a big part of being authentic, because when you say no to things, you communicate what you stand for. So learn to say no. There's a whole video about saying no respectfully on this channel, so be sure to check that out. I'm sure you'll pick a lot from it. And then there's the other aspect of congruence. This means that your life aligns. How you live in public is the same way that you live in private, like they should be the same people, not different people. When it comes to people in public, you've changed. No, it should be the same person. I think one of the hardest things you can do is to try and live different lives. You behave this way when you come to this group of people, and then when you come here, you've changed. That's a lot to keep up with, I think so. So congruence is so important, even when it comes to your branding. People need to see how you're living, or rather the aspects of your life that you allow people to see out there should align to your values, should align to how you carry out your business. That is what congruence is about, and I believe that speaks a lot for how authentic you are. Remember, you want to be as real as you can so that people can build that connection with you. People build connections with people that are real, yeah? Think about that. And also vulnerability. When you're real, you are vulnerable with people. When you cannot deliver, you speak that openly. There's a CTA I watched by Kendi Ntwiga. You can check it out. And she was talking about how she worked in this company, and one of the things that made her stay long in that company was how she would report exactly what it was the market looked like. Like when she goes to her bosses, she reports what that market is like, so that they can plan, they can make good strategies based on that market. Because there's a temptation of wanting to speak something different so that you can make yourself look like you're doing something, or I don't know for what reason, but there's that temptation. But the more you are vulnerable with people, the more you are real with people, they connect with that and they trust you for that, even for more businesses. So be authentic, be vulnerable, allow yourself to be seen by people as you are. And also in building that authenticity, you need to take a stance. When something is wrong and you agree that it's wrong and your values, speak for that, you need to take a stance and be outright about it. Say that it's wrong and that you don't support it. That is how authenticity comes about. Taking a stance, not supporting what is wrong for you to get favors, for you to be known. Yeah. So it's about taking a stance. It's about you becoming vulnerable and about authenticity. The last part of this book was getting practical. As we said when we were starting, first impressions matter. How are you connecting with people? What is your body language like? Are you paying attention to what people are saying? Are you paying attention to people's names? Oh my goodness, names is a big part of that. Do you remember people's names? Are you actually getting invested in the conversations that you are having? Or are you just about pouring yourself and saying what you can do? You need to give people time also to speak. And people can smell fakeness from afar. Are you being real with yourself? Be real with the people that you meet. Remember that first impression. When people get a hint of fakeness in you, they will drift, they will separate themselves from you. So you need to be very intentional with how you represent yourself, especially when you're meeting people for the first time. Remember that first impressions matter, and how people perceive you is going to be really difficult to change, especially those first few seconds of interaction. Now, while getting practical, there's this statement that goes around: content is king. It's still the same thing when it comes to your personal branding. And there are so many ways that you can put content about what you're doing, the value that you can give out there. People are still writing articles. There are so many social media platforms nowadays. There's still the traditional media, the newspaper, the news. There's a lot of ways you can communicate the value that you are bringing in the lives of people. So that is not dead. Content is still king. Find a way, find a thing that works for you. Find a platform that you know most of your audience goes there, so that you can reach to a broader audience. Yeah, find something that works for you and do it. You need to put in the work. Remember, this part is about getting practical. Connecting with people, communicating what you're offering, and the value that you bring is how you create your personal brand. Because if you're doing all these things and no one is seeing them, it's as good as not you doing it. So you need to get practical, and you need to find a way that gets the word to people. So if you've done a workshop, if you've done some training, are you sharing that maybe on LinkedIn and letting people see the work that you do? If you've made improvement, maybe you've been holding sessions, communicate that there has been growth from this number of people to this number of people. That's a way of you building a reputation for yourself. It's a way of sharing what you can offer and showing that people actually trust you to bring that value. The other important part when it comes to getting practical is investing in yourself, because you need to keep showing up and leveling up every minute. There's a lot of competition. People are trying to get to the same market as you. So how do you stand out from the rest? It's by continually investing in yourself. And then after you've done all these things, you need to track progress. That's part of the practical bit of personal branding. If you're not tracking, you might not know the growth or the impact that you're creating. Because then after you've tracked, that is what you're communicating to people through the content that you create, through the articles you write, through your newsletters you send out. So make sure that you're tracking the progress, so that you can communicate that and also know how do you need to change, what addition needs to be there, and so much more. So that's all I can say about this book. It's such a nice book. I'll share details down below of how you can go and get it. And I know your personal brand is going to be transformed completely. It was such a joy reading this book, and then the best part about it is that she has used real life examples. Like literally, there are many business owners here who are giving their thoughts about building their brand, what has worked for them. Honestly speaking, there's a lot you will pick from this book. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you get to learn a lot about personal branding, especially if you're in that journey. You are an entrepreneur, you're trying to create a business, you're trying to build a brand for yourself. Consider those few starter points and then build as you go, and be hungry for information and learn how you can establish your brand. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one. Bye.